Okay, so in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to show how we can use a Vlookup to give greater detail to this data set. This data set is property tax sales from October 1st, 2022 to September 30th, 2023. And we're going to be narrowing in on this column here. This is called property class. And you'll see property class is a number. It's a numerical identifier for the type of property that we're looking at. So let's just quickly note that we have a property location here. This is the main sort of identifier of the property in terms of its location. We have some additional information here like tax block and lot and qual, which is like a unit number. And then we have additional information going off to the right. Now, what we want to do is we want to actually understand that when we see a property class of, let's say, number 1, which is this address here, what does that mean? What does the number 1 mean? Now, to understand this, we can click over to the lookup data. So for instance, number 1 means vacant land. Number 2 is residential property. 3A is farmland. 4A is commercial, and so on. So what the state does is they use this numbering system, the number itself, in the data set, and then they rely on the end user, which means us, to actually create this association. And that's what we're about to do. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the column M because I want to right-click now, and I want to choose Insert. And what that does is that gets me a new column right next to the property class column. And I'm going to call this property class name. And I'm actually also going to put an A in front of it. And that just tells me that I have an analytic that I've added to this record set. I always want to be able to distinguish between the original data set fields and the fields that I've added. And this field will eventually become part of my data dictionary. Okay, so now I have to have a way to get the property class name into all of these rows, and it has to match up with the related number. So the formula I'm going to use is the Vlookup, because what the Vlookup will do is it will do a record by record search on the number. It will go to this table and we'll find the related property class name. So let's go over that now. We're going to do equals Vlookup, open parentheses. Now remember, we get this nice handy teletext here from Excel that gives us an indication of what we need. There are 4 arguments to the Vlookup. The first argument is the Vlookup value, and that's the search term, and that's going to be, in this instance, number 1. I'm going to do a comma to lock that number 1 in, and now I need to feed the formula argument number 2, which is the table array. The table array is located on another tab, so what I can do is I can come down here, click on that other tab, and this is the data they want. Now, the way the Vlookup works is I'm going to select both columns, and I want to make sure my search term is in the leftmost column. That's a rule with the Vlookup. Now I'm going to do another comma. I want to lock in the cell reference of columns A and B, and another rule of the Vlookup is whatever value we want to report back, which in this case is property class name. What we want to do is we want to count from left to right the number of columns starting with the search term column. So column A is number 1. My search term is there. I'm going to jump 1 column to the right. Column number 2 is where my property class name is. I want an exact match. I do not want an approximate match. So I'm going to choose false, close parentheses. And now I have the property class name located in my data set. And this is going to be very handy as I start to review my records, look at the number 1, the number 2, number 4A. I want to immediately see what is the related description. This is also going to be handy when we start to create pivot tables off of this data. Now I'm in a record set with a couple thousand rows, so I cannot do this. I can't just start scrolling down. This is going to take way too long, and it's going to be not nearly as efficient. What I want to do instead is I want to use my hotkeys, and here's what we're going to do. I'm going to use my hotkeys, which means I'm going to use Command on the Mac or Control on the Windows, and I'm going to use Command C to copy and Command V, as in Victor, to paste. And what I'm grabbing here is the formula. I'm copying the formula in this cell. Then I'm going to jump over into a column where I know there's data that goes all the way down to the bottom of the data set. Command, down arrow. And I jump right down to the bottom of the data set. I'm going to jump back into the column where I know I want all of these formulas copied. I'm going to now add the Shift key. So Shift, Command, up arrow. And I jump right back up, grabbing all the cells along the way. And I'm going to do Command V. And now what I've done is I've just copied that Vlookup into every single row. Now I have the property class description next to the property class number, and I am good to go. I'm going to save this with a Control S, and my worksheet is now updated with some new and important information that we will use going forward. a really good example of how the VLOOKUP can be a very powerful formula in your data analysis. As always, keep in touch with questions.